Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel where I'm trying to become a professional videographer in 60 days. In the last video, we went over some of the learning aspects of understanding your camera and explored concepts like ISO, shutter speed, frame rate, and aperture. But today we're putting those practices into action, and I'm going around my city and showcasing why these settings matter so much to achieve cinematic videos. Along the way, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my story and why this challenge is so personal to me. So let's get going. I've always loved video and how it can change your perspective on the world. So much power in great storytelling, and that's why I'm so committed to being a professional videographer. I want to reveal people's stories in the way that they truly deserve. But first, we have to understand my story. So let's rewind. I've always dreamed of wanting to become a professional videographer, but let's be honest, it didn't start well. My first official camera was a GoPro, and yeah, that was amazing. But that dream only lasted 3 weeks until I decided that it would be a good idea to shoot a hockey puck at it because these things were indestructible. Long story short, it got completely destroyed. But through this experience, I got to know that I have an urge to create videos and I would love to do this. Through the last years, life has taken over and I thought this dream would never become a reality for me. All right. So moving forward, let's talk about aperture. As you remember from the last video, aperture affects the amount of light that enters the lens and changes the depth of field. Basically, how much of your shot is in focus. Lowering it, like settings f3.9, creates a dreamy background blur, which is great for isolating subjects or portraits. Okay, let's say I'm shooting my bike here. See how the background softens, keeping the focus on the subject? To show more of the scene like a landscape, I'd raise my aperture, maybe around f8 or f11. That keeps the foreground and background sharper. Watch this. Notice how raising the aperture makes everything clearer? Perfect for outdoor scenes with more detail. With aperture, it's all about knowing when to isolate your subject versus when to capture everything. You know, and after that GoPro mishap, my creative spark didn't really start up until I became a Christian and started making faith-related videos, which was fulfilling, but eventually I felt stuck. I ran out of video ideas and I felt like my creative spark was dimming, but I feel like I always still had the passion to create videos. Now shutter speed. This is your control over motion. A faster shutter speed, like 1/200th of a second, freezes action. So if you're filming something like fast-moving cars or people running, or in my case, me on my bike, it keeps everything looking sharp and crisp. Notice how it catches each moment without any blur. But if I want a motion blur effect, I'd slow it down to 1/60th or lower. The slower shutter speed gives you that smooth, flowy look. Just remember, the slower your shutter speed, the steadier your hand needs to be to avoid over blurring. Look at my bike ride when I slowed it all the way down and see how much motion blur is in my shot. But honestly, experiment these settings for yourself and see how changing your shutter speed really affects the story you're trying to convey. Picking up the camera again wasn't easy, especially since I'm just starting out. But after getting married, I felt this pull to give videography everything that I've got. I have 60 days until my work permit arrives, which means that I'll likely need to get a regular job after that. So this challenge is my last chance to see if I can really take my passion for storytelling into something real. I'm still learning, but I'm pushing myself every day, hoping that in the end, I've created something that truly people can relate to. It's still amazing to look back and see how far I've come since my GoPro days. Well, that was only 3 weeks after all. But I'm still new to this and not a professional at all. ISO is all about light sensitivity. When you're in a low light or under a bridge, it's nice to keep your ISO at a higher level. Right now, I actually have my ISO set to 1600, so I'm on the verge of having a grainy shot. But look at these 3 shots side by side as I used ISO to brighten a scene from being super dark to super light, and then eventually too light. Now, if I was in direct sunlight, I'd want my ISO to be around 100 to avoid overexposure. It works, but above 1600, you start to get a grainy look. So for your videos, if you're filming in low light, raise that ISO up, and if you're filming in direct sun, lower it until it's good for you to use. Knowing your camera's ISO can help you get bright, clear shots without sacrificing quality. Honestly, I never thought I'd be here, counting down 60 days to see if I can make something real out of this. It's tough putting myself out there when I'm just starting, but maybe that's exactly why I'm doing it. Because if I can turn this passion into something real, maybe that resonates with someone out there who has a dream but they just don't know how to chase it. And lastly, we have frame rate. And I know I did an entire outfit change and scene change, but that's because the weather has been so bad outside that I have to film inside. But getting back to frame rate is the control for how many frames your camera shows. A lower frame rate, like 24 frames a second, gives you that classic cinematic feel. This is what your camera is going to be set to 90% of the time when you're going to be filming. But the benefit of putting your frame rate higher is that you can capture things better in action, like sports, or if you wanted to slow something down as well, if you wanted to do a really slow hand. So know with frame rate, most of the time you're gonna have it set to 24 frames a second, but if you wanna capture sports or slow-mos, you're gonna up your frame rate. So there you have it. That's how you can use ISO, aperture, frame rate, and shutter speed to enhance your videos. But remember, it's not just about knowing your settings. It's about experimenting and finding out what works for you. After all, I'm just starting out, but I hope my journey inspires you to go after your own passions, no matter what stage of experience you have. If this video helped you, please give it a thumbs up, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe as I try to navigate all that goes into trying to become a professional videographer. Let's learn and grow together, so I'll see you in the next one.